Formula One is never short of drama and controversies, but no one has kept the world on the edge of their seats like Lewis Hamilton in recent times. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, declined to confirm whether Lewis Hamilton would race for Mercedes next season in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix aftermath. While retirement is probably unlikely, we can't help but wonder what would happen if Lewis Hamilton decides to hang up his F1 helmet. What will the future of Mercedes look like, and what would Lewis decide to do with himself? The most obvious alternative for Hamilton is his departing colleague Valtteri Bottas. He has been with the team for 5 years and has extensive expertise. While he has never been consistent enough to challenge Hamilton throughout the season, he is one of the few drivers who can compete with Lewis in qualifying. Furthermore, stability would be required because his partner would be George Russell, who, although being a part of the Mercedes Junior program and linked to the seat for years, will be in his first season at a new team and may require some time to adjust. But how easy will it be for Mercedes to re-sign Bottas? Firstly, they will have to compensate Alfa Romeo because they have a 2-year contract with a Finn, which will not be cheap. Secondly, would Bottas accept to return to Mercedes just to serve as second fiddle to Russell? With Alfa, it is evident that he will be the team captain, whereas Russell is considered as Mercedes' future. Let's say Bottas does return to Mercedes. What comes next? Alfa Romeo will need to refill his seat. They are unlikely to entice anyone onto the 2022 grid because they are simply not competitive enough at the moment to encourage drivers to break contracts. The popular candidate for the position would be F2 winner Oscar Piastri or talented Sauber Academy driver Théo Pourchaire, but neither has any F1 experience. Given that they'd be racing with fellow rookie Guan Yu Zhou, we can't imagine Alfa going with an all-rookie lineup. Instead, they may look for former Formula One drivers. Antonio Giovinazzi could be re-signed, but may be committed to Formula E. Nico Hülkenberg is known for being a safe pair of hands, but he has been out of the race for 2 years, so he may take too long to get used to the new car. Daniil Kvyat, another alternative, is a driver who, on his day, is quite quick and has been in the sport for several years. Given that he was Alpine's reserve driver in 2021, he will have spent a significant amount of time in the simulator and be well versed in the 2022 car. Alfa Romeo's best option for a Bottas successor is likely to be Kvyat. But what if Bottas is unable to start? They would almost certainly want a proven talent who is still sharp and most likely want to hire an active driver. Esteban Ocon came up via the junior program and was rumored to be a possible Bottas replacement for 2020 and even 2022. He has had a consistent 2021 and has won his first race. Mercedes would struggle to pull him away from Alpine, but given that Mercedes has now won 8 Constructors' Championships in a row, Ocon would be hard-pressed to turn down the opportunity to drive in a Mercedes. What would the Enstone-based team do if Ocon left Alpine? Again, Kvyat could be an option because he used to be the reserve driver. But Piastri will undoubtedly be too difficult to overlook. He is an Alpine junior who has won successive Formula Renault, F3, and F2 titles, making him the first driver to do so. It would be an ideal opportunity to ease him in, as he would be driving alongside Fernando Alonso, who would be an excellent mentor for the Australian. If Alpine can build a race-winning car, Piastri and Alonso would be an enticing pairing. Well, the speculations will always be there, but we need to remember that this is not the first time the 7-time world champion has been rumored to quit. In fact, Hamilton has reportedly been on the point of quitting Formula One 4 times in the last 5 years. Anyone who has listened to team radio in recent seasons is used to Mercedes and Hamilton's constant in-the-moment whining, but their behavior surrounding this championship is frankly embarrassing to them and insulting to Verstappen and the entire Red Bull organization. Lewis nearly departed the team after an incident with a teammate, champion leader, and eventually world winner Nico Rosberg in Spain in 2016. In 2018, he was among many drivers who protested the season calendar being stretched to 25 races. For the majority of the offseason last year, his Mercedes seat was the only one without a confirmed driver, probably a contract negotiation tactic. However, when the season began, Hamilton found himself behind the wheel of his Mercedes. Hamilton's only missed race since the start of his career and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is the one in which he was isolating due to COVID-19 in early December 2020. That means that he has raced in 288 of the 289 races that have been held over the last 15 years. Naturally, the loss of Formula One's only black driver and the most prolific winner would be a huge loss for all of us who want to see him return and chase the 8th championship. Now, considering that Hamilton quits tomorrow, what would the future hold for the man himself? Lewis Hamilton is now active in several projects outside Formula One. Lewis has his own fashion line, which he co-created with Tommy Hilfiger. He also makes his own music under the name XNDA. Lewis is also a very generous person who wants to be more involved with his program to get more African American students involved in motorsport. Last but not least, Lewis is the owner of an Extreme E team. But what if Hamilton decides to take his talents elsewhere? We've all heard of drivers transferring from one series to another to prove their value. However, in F1, we don't hear much about drivers switching from one series to another, at least not in the context of the famous names. Fernando Alonso was the most recent driver to switch between racing series. Before him, however, you'd have to go back almost 10 years to see a prominent F1 name shift series. Hamilton has previously stated that if he were to participate in another series, it would be NASCAR. Given that Hamilton has sold all of his electric cars and his thoughts on electrification, it's safe to conclude that he won't be returning to NASCAR anytime soon. The current IndyCar grid is nearly full, with the big full-time seats already filled. However, David Land recently revealed that a possible fifth Penske car could be added to the Indy 500. Of course, this would be for a single event, but it would be easy to make it a full-time entry. Roger Penske, the team's and series owner, wants to see more African American drivers on the grid, and one move he's made is to form an Indy Lights, what F2 is to F1, squad that will feature African American drivers. Given Penske's intentions, hiring Lewis Hamilton for the fifth IndyCar position would seem logical. Bringing in Hamilton would also bring a lot of publicity and sponsors, not just for Penske, but for the entire IndyCar series. IndyCar would gain a lot of new fans, and the fact that he was recently knighted would further boost the exposure. Signing Hamilton to IndyCar would also put him in competition with Jimmy Johnson, the 7-time NASCAR champion. That would be a great headline. Two of the best current drivers would go head-to-head, not to mention 6-time IndyCar champion Scott Dixon. Hamilton would also welcome in the World Endurance Championship, where it appears that new manufacturers are entering the hypercar class every day, which will compete at the Le Mans 24 hours. Porsche, Audi, Toyota, Alpine, and Peugeot would be waiting at Hamilton's door to sign him up for their programs. Finally, Formula E is the most probable of all options. Hamilton has long been an advocate of electrification, and given that Formula E cars are all electric, it appears to be a match made in heaven. Mercedes also operates a Formula E team, so Hamilton would not be required to change manufacturers. And he might actually be considering all options this time. Hamilton is a guy of heart and depth, and he is visibly and appropriately devastated by the loss. Perhaps it was to prevent the agony of loss. Perhaps it's more. However, much has been made of Hamilton's decision to unfollow all social media accounts, including F1, and to go almost silent on Instagram and Twitter. He's only been seen once as part of his recent knighthood at Windsor Castle. Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher have each won 7 F1 championships, the most of any driver in history. The victory in Abu Dhabi would have secured his place as the greatest of all time. The repercussions of the FIA decision are almost tailored for Netflix's Drive to Survive. Hamilton's comeback would add to the narrative of revenging his undue loss in Abu Dhabi. It remains to be seen whether this is all show or if it truly reflects Hamilton's plans for next year. So what do you think? Is this the end of Lewis Hamilton's F1 journey? Or will the 7-time world champion come back to make history on the Bahrain GP? Comment down below. Also, if you're new to this channel, subscribe and click on the notification bell to get notified when we upload more content.